to it. We're also going live on YouTube. So if you're logging on over there, post your questions. And if yours gets picked, we'll do our best to cover it during the show. Also, shout out, we are live on Instagram. Same idea. If you got questions, send us a DM. Jason, how you doing? Me and you are sesh buddies today.
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing good. Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. And I understand it's a beautiful day for a feature update. Let's give our friends a little overview of what's going on with our mobile photo upload feature.
You bet. So in the web interface, we've been able to do we've been able to do multiple picture uploads through the comments or tasks section. Great way to document. You're going in your grow room, taking a few pictures, maybe by each zone. And then right now, we have now released the ability to do that from your mobile app as well. So if you're using mobile app on iPhone, Android, iPad, etc., then just go ahead and do a new task or a new comment and add as many pictures as you want in there. Up to 250 meg, which that's going to be quite a few pictures. So
that's plenty, but that's a big game changer. A lot of growers have been asking us for that feature update. And I don't know if you watch the program, you know, Jason's a big fan of taking photos, right?
I am. Yeah. It's, it's something interesting because when you walk in a room, you know what you want to be looking at. And it's a great way to communicate what a grower in the room is looking at. A great way to document the harvest group as time progresses. How do you expect this strain to look at this day, at this age, as we start to make improvements? How does that change the morphology of the plant? All that type of stuff. And so it is also a way to just go back and look at something that maybe you weren't taking advantage of analyzing at that time. So tons of times I'll go back, 5, 6, 7 years at pictures that I've taken and try and apply something that I've learned recently to what I used to deal with.
Mm-hmm. So valuable. Awesome. And it's actually a perfect segue to this first question that we got into. So take advantage of mobile photo uploads, multiple photos now through the mobile app. Enjoy that. Keep us posted, Arroyo customers. But we got this question here from Bookham Ghetto. They wrote in, hello, I'm 1 year into working in the industry. I'm in cultivation and want to take notes and document our grows. What kind of information, stats, benchmarks can I use on a daily basis from zone fill to harvest? What's your suggestions, Jason?
Yeah, so I'm going to start this off with just, assuming that you have a data logging system like Arroyo that's keeping track of your HVAC and some of your substrate conditions. That being said, if everything's mostly dialed in, what I always try and make sure that I have is plant height, runoff pH, and then runoff volume. Those are basically the three that I like to see at least every other day, if not every day, if we can. And those are information that's going to really help you dial in your growth cycle per strain. So obviously there's a ton more that really does need to be documented. And these are things that you may or may not have to document on a very regular basis, depending on how well dialed you're in. So in the Arroyo system, we've got the manual readings option, which is a great way to be able to chart this information right into your harvest group. And the default options that we have for manual readings right now are dry back, moisture content, spot EC, leaf temp, spot water content, spot pH, runoff EC, runoff volume, feed pH, feed volume, flower diameter, node spacing, plant height, spot temperature, water activity, stomatal conductance, CO2 levels, and what basically is going on here. And there's a few more in there. What basically we're doing there is trying to either validate some of the handheld measurements that you're taking, just document any of the work that you are in there. So if maybe you're trying to troubleshoot a HVAC issue and you've got 2 climate stations in there that are showing a little bit different value, might come down to some airflow in the room or something. Go and take a few spot measurements with a handheld unit and plot them right into Arroyo. And that way you can analyze that data right on top of each other. Same thing with, like EC or runoff. If you're trying to dial in, get an understanding of how much difference you have from your feed EC to your substrate EC, getting it right from the Terros 12 and Arroyo to your runoff EC, get that plotted right on top, and you'll start to see some of the trends that you'll learn to get used to. And some of that information, kind of once you get a facility and situation all set up, you may not have to take them as regularly as the first 3 that I mentioned.
Fantastic overview. Bookham Dano, good luck out there. we're going to keep it moving. We already got some questions here on YouTube. I'm going to, Vegito 505 looks like submitted a few. So I'm going to do one at a time here. So the first question, would you mess around with feed EC before feed pH to fix pH runoff?
Would I mess around with feed EC before pH? Yes, I would. Absolutely. So when we think about, our feed EC, and I guess the answer is yes and no, right? I wouldn't modify what my feed EC actually is. I would just change the amount of runoff that I'm pushing through there, right? And so basically what's happening is when we have a nutrient level in the substrate, sometimes the plant's going to eat different amounts of nutrients in composition, different elements in that composition. And so we might start to be seeing a deficiency in one element. And let's say if we push more runoff, usually it's going to start to stabilize that. However, if we are just low in our feed EC, we may need to up that EC just to make sure that we can have the amounts of runoff that we need in order for the crop steering strategies that we're trying to deploy. So I guess it's a yes and a no question, because it depends on what you're running into. If we're seeing substrate ECs at like 2 or 2.5, then it's probably time just to up your feed EC, and you might be able to resolve those pH issues simply by supplying the plant with a sufficient level of ions of each type in the composition of that nutrient.
Awesome. Vegito, if you have further clarification, feel free to drop it on YouTube. But they also had a couple other questions here. The next one was, am I right to say when it comes to soaking blocks to just pH to 5.5 and use RO water, then first irrigation, use nuke water? Is that?
Nuke water, yeah, some nutrient water. Probably not best to use nuclear water.
Okay.
I'm not sure plants like the radiation. Yeah, that should be fine. In certain situations, it's absolutely okay, and sometimes a better way to do it. Like if we're just trying to get our compressed cocoa to be uncompressed, so we can get our irrigation spikes in there before we do any planting, then that's absolutely fine. You just want to make sure that you have charged that substrate with nutrients before we're getting plants in there. So as far as that, that 5.5 value, I like to be in that 5.4, 5.5 value for rock wools. For cocoa, it's just going to depend a little bit on the manufacturer and how well buffered those were coming in the supply. So that's something where just get started with them. Do a little bit of pHing after you've soaked them up. Say maybe if you're at 5.5 and you soak them up, and your next set of runoff comes out at still at 5.5, then you may not need to drop it quite that low for rock wool or for cocoa. Excuse me. Usually for cocoa, we're looking at feeds of 5.8 to 6.0 for our pH.
All right. Excellent. Thank you for that. Third question here from Vegito. When feeding 3EC, is that more for higher PPFD and CO2 rooms? Like if you were not dosing CO2 or highlight, would you still feed a 3EC?
Great question. Yeah. So really what's going to come down to is we're always trying to have our variables balanced, right? And so when we think about how much CO2 is in the environment, obviously photosynthesis is CO2 plus water catalyzed by light is going to be how much food we can build for that plant. And so when we think about, all right, if I have lower CO2 levels, there is a chance that you can get away with lower ECs. That being said, and lower PPFDs. That being said, in most situations, you might as well be supplying them with enough that they're not going to run into some deficiencies, and then just reduce the amount of runoff that you're getting out of there. And basically, the whole point of that is that with certain nutrient compositions, we may or may not be matching exactly what the plant is eating. And so I would definitely have some substrate sensors in there and start getting some of your runoff ECs. Take a look at what those values are. And if you had a substrate sensor in there, you can start to understand, all right, well, even at 3 EC and our other levels, PPFD and CO2 lower than optimal, are we running out of nutrients? I mean, is that plant uptaking more than we're supplying at that 3 EC? And a lot of it's going to depend on, light levels and strain type.
Strain dependent. All right. Vegito, I think we covered it. So yeah, let us know if there's anything else you want us to talk about here. We are getting some questions in on Instagram. Let me run this one by you. I'm reading this how it came in. All right. When talking dry back, am I supposed to ass up my day dry back and my night dry back for my generative and vegetative steering?
I think I understand the question. Yeah. So, what I call for a dry back percentage is going to be basically, your highest water content during the day. So where are we at after our P1 irrigations? Most of the time it's at field capacity. That's usually what we're trying to achieve on a daily basis when we are in the right size substrate and we have healthy plants. So yeah, it'll be the amount of water content loss in the day plus the amount of water content loss overnight. And that's going to be the dry back percentage.
Boom. Thank you for that. Thanks, Instagram. Keep them coming, y'all. All right. We've got some more live questions coming in on YouTube. Taylor dropped a couple for us. Let's start with this first one. Can you achieve high enough substrate ECs to gen steer with a 2.5 input? Or do I really need to get up to 3 to 3.5?
There's a lot of variables that are coming into play here. Obviously, we just talked about two of the most important ones related to EC levels, CO2 and light. So it's hard to say without tracking it. That being said, you put some substrate sensors in there with some time series data, and it'd be pretty easy to see if your nutrients are going to be able